with our Human Resources organization to discuss personnel changes. Because we're still operating under the stay-at-home order, several of our staff are calling in, and as well we have people who are physically with us. And so I'll ask that before you speak that please identify yourselves so that we can, for the purpose of our recording, everybody will know who it is that's participating. I am officially calling this meeting to order. Attending by phone is Commissioner Bill Brooks, in person Commissioners Duncan and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I don't hear of any. First item, and excuse me, we do have potential action items here. First one is Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA, federal law, and I'm going to call on our HR Director, Sylvia Proud.
Thank you, Commissioners. I wanted to review with everyone the Families First Corona Response Act and how it works. I received some information that there may be a bunch of different perceptions related to the act. And so it went into effect April 1st this year, and the board approved the policy related to that. It runs through December 31st of 2020 at this point. The law is related to the COVID pandemic, but employees have to apply specifically for the two types of leave that are available. It isn't just a blanket policy. It's more like FMLA. If you have an event, an employee has a life event that's related to COVID-19, and the 6 reasons are provided in the law and in our policy, then each individual employee has to apply for that leave. The 2 types of leave that there are is emergency paid leave, which allows up to 80 hours to be paid. It's either at 100% or 2/3 of your pay. Our policy, the way we wrote it, we said at the minimum that the board can go above and beyond that. And we also incorporated into that policy that if you're in that realm of one of the reasons of taking leave and you're only eligible for 2/3 of your pay, that they could use their accrued leave times for that. Then we have the Expanded Family and Medical Leave Act, which that one only relates to reason number 5, which deals with child care or school closures. And again, for the FFCRA leave and the job protected leave, each employee has to apply individually for that leave. To date, we've had 24 requests for the Family First Coronavirus Act leave, and out of that, 15 were related to a health care providers saying you should self-quarantine. We have only about 5 that are related to child care issues so far that we've been aware of, but it looks like we need to clarify that you do have to apply for this leave, because in meeting with the auditor's office today, we think we have a few that haven't applied that should be submitting their applications for this kind of leave. I provided, and it's at Tina's table, a fact sheet. I tried to simplify the policy and say, and provide you with emergency paid leave, how it works, the reasons, what it pays, and what qualifies for 100% and 2/3, and then the expanded leave. So this is the document that's up front. Okay. So hopefully that will be helpful as people are navigating through this. Cecilia Sweet is the HR generalist who's handling this policy and the leave, just like she does FMLA. So please have employees get a hold of her. She'll get the application process started for the employee. In some of the qualifying reasons, you do have to provide a doctor's certificate that indicates you need this leave. The only one that you don't have to is child care. We know the schools are closed. But in that, only one, if you have a household, say your husband, wife, 2 kids, or significant other, if the spouse or significant other could be home, the employee shouldn't be applying for the leave, because there is some daycare provided. It may come up for them later on in the year, at which they would be eligible then to apply if their significant other or spouse was not available or their child care provider
But my question would be if, A, school's open back up, or B, the end of school is second week of June. So after that, I would think that people would just go into their normal summer health care, or, normal summer childcare.
There would be that assumption, but the child care provider may still not be available because the pandemic isn't going to just end. Even as we lift those stay orders, we're gonna still have COVID-19 in our communities. And it's really gonna be a case-by-case basis, whether the employee's gonna need the full up to 12 weeks for child care purposes, leave or not.
Okay.
And some of them, as the restrictions get opened up and looser, then they may be able to have that child care provided to them and won't need the full 12 weeks.
And you said all these provisions related to COVID-19 are valid through December 31st of this year?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And we don't know if the feds will extend it. We'll have
Right,
to see
right.
what COVID does as it evolves.
Okay. So, keep going.
And really, it was more information for you to see how the law works, and that each employee does have to apply individually for that leave. There was some misperception about reason number 1, which states employee is subject to a federal,
Yes.
state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. It doesn't cover us globally as a government entity because we're an essential service. Each individual employee has to apply for that, and we did get a legal opinion from Darrin, and I believe he's on the line. We'd like for him to provide some information related to that.
Darrin, did you want to jump in here? Darrin?
I'm trying to get my phone off of mute.
Oh,
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So, yeah, I think if I heard everything Sylvia said, she covered all of it. This might be repeating, but I do agree that all county employees are essential service employees under the governor's stay-at-home order. So item number 1 in the FFCRA policy, that really doesn't apply to us other than some unique situations, but generally across the board, it doesn't apply.
Okay.
Any other issues? I know that that Sylvia and I have fielded a number of questions, and I think there has been some inconsistency across the elected officials as to how they're handling this. I know that some electeds, they're sending part of their staff, rotating their staff home. And to me, commissioners, that some of that management portion of it is in the elected's discretion to do this on a short-term basis. And what I had suggested to Sylvia was that maybe we want the commissioners to address that, whether the commissioners would give that authority, even though I think it's probably already there for the separate elected officials, to have the discretion to fill in some of these gray areas with just administrative leave. Hopefully it's just for a short period, and maybe if the commissioners are inclined to do that, to do it during the pendency of this governor's stay-at-home order. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And commissioners, I think that's what, well, Chris, I've heard you say it several times, essentially that.
Yeah, why don't you repeat that? What it was that I said for everybody's benefit who's listening in. Go right ahead.
Yes, that, well, I'm going to put these are my words of what
That's
I
okay.
say, that you're going to afford the elected officials the discretion to use
Okay.
administrative leave during this pandemic. And you said something to the effect for those employees who are subject to not being able to work through no fault of their own.
Yes. And I think as a board, I think we generally agree to that. Am I correct? Okay.
You've never really voted on it, but I've heard those comments.
Okay, fair enough. Leslie, are you okay with that?
I am through May 1st. And then
Okay.
after May 1st, I want to revisit this, and we may need to tighten some things up depending on where we're going.
Yeah, makes sense. Bill?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Dena, please.
Just for clarification for payroll, so we will process payroll as it is documented on the employee's timesheet.
Yes.
Okay, so if the elected official says use COVID admin leave for this person for these hours, then that's how we will process.
Right.
Until the 1st of May, and then we will reassess.
That is correct.
Okay, so I can walk through this if you
We're
want me to.
not
I think-
yet.
So I
Go ahead.
think we're leading into the next
Okay.
agenda item.
Right.
Okay, go right ahead.
Because I do have questions about the FFCRA, because some of the reasons were 2/3 and then 1/3 is your own time, and it looks like some elected officials kept them whole and let them use their admin time, and some have charged their own leave time. And my suggestion would be that since we're willing to leave our employees whole, for the first 80 hours of the FFCRA, no matter what reasons, 1 through 6, that it's paid at 100%. But then anything after starting May 1st gets addressed in a different manner potentially, once the board can see what the governor's order is from there. So what I'd like to do is see if we could have then payroll or the auditor's office be able to reverse those entries where the employee submitted, I want to use my leave time, if we can reverse those entries and not charge them that leave time.
But what if they want to use it? For instance, they give away time every year, and they've asked
Good
to
point.
use it.
Very good point. I would say then we need to reach out to each employee and ask them if that's what they want to continue, or the board has agreed to allow them to use admin time for that, for those 80 up to those first 80 hours, if they applied for that leave.
Right.
That makes sense. So are we ready to move on to the second item?
Commissioners.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
This, Darren.
Oh, Darren, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Darrin. So Sylvia and I did talk about that, and there does appear to be some inconsistency. So it would be both of our recommendation that try to handle this consistently, and I do agree with Leslie, through the end,
Through the end of
first
the month,
March, the
right.
end of the governor's current. Yes.
So Darren, that means you won't give people a choice to use their
Oh,
vacation?
I think the choice is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay. But basically hold to this concept through the end of the month or till May 1st, and then see what the governor does from there.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
Any other questions before we move on?
You'll have to vote.
Darren, do you
okay.
think we need a formal vote here?
Well, you will on the benefit adjustment.
Oh, item number 2?
Number 1.
Number one, we are adjusting, so what Sylvia and I are recommending is that you adjust it for 80 hours full benefit, up to the discretion of the employee. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to.
Right. Okay, I move.
Go right ahead.
I move that regarding the people qualifying for the 2/3 pay, that the 1/3 pay be adjusted per employee's discretion to make them whole in those situations. And, yeah, with admin leave with pay up until May 1st.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Darrow.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 2, administrative leave with pay considerations by the BOCC.
Yes. The reason I put this on the agenda is there was direction through April 15th.
Yes.
Some memos that said if you had non-working hours due to COVID, stay-home order, you would keep the employees on admin leave if they couldn't telework or any of the other reasons, or if if an employee had someone in their household that was being tested for COVID, during that time period, they were gonna be allowed admin leave with pay. Those were some of the scenarios that, the board and electeds, I believe, were giving admin leave with pay for. We just need to give that direction again to countywide management so they know what to do, and then, the auditor's office and payroll will know how to pay employees and the codes to use.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the only provision that we made, or the only exception, is where an employee was able to work and chose not to. Is that a fair statement?
That would be fair. I think it's.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm fine with continuing if you have a household member who is being tested, that you should remain home on admin pay until that test comes back. And then once the test comes back, then we'll obviously further adjust. I think that's important just for our employees that are coming to work every day. But otherwise, everybody else should kind of fall into the CARES Act.
Well, only if they have a reason, one of those 6
Right.
reasons, and they won't. Where the admin leave might come in that needs to be considered is if departments have scaled back to their continuity of operations and we're not doing full-scale government services, and they've sent employees home, not of their own doing, what do
Right.
we do with them? And they're not able to telework. I
Right.
know a lot of departments that I spoke to and elected officials, the majority of our people are doing telework. There were about 236 that received admin COVID pay through part of pay period 7 and pay period 8. And Dena's got some numbers related to that and the cost. But those are the kind of things that the department heads are looking for direction from the board is, what do we do? Do we continue it through the stay-home order that's been extended through April 30th and continue business as usual from the original board directive?
I would like to see as many employees get back to work as possible. So if, under the elected officials or department heads, being able to manage that, then, let's kind of get these people back to work. So,
I agree.
And those who can't, if there's a specific department that says, I don't have availability for them to be in the office or telework, do they get admin leave? Because we're directing them to stay home, or what do we do with their time?
So do we deal with this in the same way that we do taking it to May 1st?
Yes, that's the direction I think your department heads are really looking for.
so my direction would be get these people back to work if at all possible. If not possible, then I think we need to do a one-on-one situation and, okay, please say why they don't qualify for the CARES Act, but yet you have them on admin leave. So that's kind of where I'm,
So you're basically giving some individual discretion to the EO or department head?
well, no,
You're
I
not.
guess I'm not.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
saying, those who can get back to work, let's get them back to work. Those who, for some reason, can't, I want to review those.
So do you want would that include elected officials as well, or just department heads?
Well, definitely our department heads, should touch base with us. As far as elected officials go, I mean, I guess I'm just not seeing a reason why we would have somebody out who couldn't return if they're not covered already with the CARES Act. If they don't have illness, if they don't have family illness, if they don't have childcare issues, why are they not here?
And how many would you estimate would be in that category?
236.
230.
236?
Yeah, that had potentially no choice, but they were sent home.
Right.
Driver's license,
Without-
they're forced to
yeah.
be home, and they can't work from home.
Okay.
Good
Because
point.
there's regulations around computer systems, and I think district court was one of them, but they've really tried to navigate how that
Well,
works.
they're
They might
working in
have a few-
elections, they're
Right,
doing
we're
all
gonna
kinds of
point
stuff.
out other
Yeah.
areas of the clerk's division to try to make use of those free powers.
Well, I would still like them to touch base then by elected official, just saying, hey, I have this many people out, for this reason, because we can't, whatever the thing is.
Yeah, it's very interesting because if an organization has insufficient work, they lay people off. We're saying maybe not necessarily that it's insufficient work, but that they're unable to work. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that we lay the people off, but why is this any different than a situation where there's insufficient work? We're saying they can't work, but in other organizations that are adversely affected by this whole COVID crisis, they're saying they simply don't have the work for the people, right? Because the demand is down. Go ahead.
Right, because we closed down and, so driver's license or licensing of your vehicle. If we're only doing it by appointment, there's only so many appointments a day rather than 50 people in at
Except,
one
I don't know that
time.
that's the best. I wish Joe Johns was on the line,
Yeah.
because they're working quite a bit. They're doing mail and the drop-off
Yeah, they are.
stuff,
Yeah.
and so I'm not sure that, so some of them are staying home? Because I haven't heard that motor vehicle licensing is some
They're
of
not
them.
fully staffed, I think they're rotating.
Right.
Okay.
A lot of departments are doing rotations.
Right.
Really practicing that social distancing,
Mhm.
those sort of
So
things.
what do you recommend?
She's
Come
recommends.
on.
You know what she recommends.
I'm a believer in keeping people whole if it's not their fault that they've been sent home and there isn't work for them to do. If they're like, I don't want to work,
Yeah.
then
Well,
that
that's
should be
different,
their own time.
clearly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if it's a situation like this pandemic and we're saying we don't have telework for you, I don't, whether they can't keep them in the office or not, I don't know. I'm not familiar with a lot of the situations because it's at the elected officials' discretion. But if they don't have the work for them at this point or something they could do at home, admin leave of pay. Just like we've done for the last couple weeks, I think we carry it through April 30th. And, but really encourage them, start looking at returning some of these employees to work, or where else can they go and help other departments that are fully functioning and have too much to do. sort of thing.
And we've actually offered their services to elections. The concern in elections, of course, was the training time. But yeah, we did.
Anybody can step in close.
Yeah.
Right. So that's your recommendation. Oh, here comes
Oh,
Joe.
right.
He overheard you.
Oh, good. Maybe he's got an example. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyone?
I don't want, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Joe. We're just talking about whether or not to extend admin leave to people who have been sent home who are not able to telework. And in your purview, do you have a lot of those people who would be at work if you had work for them to do? Or do you have any not at home?
We have full gamut. We have a small percentage of our staff that are doing as much work as we have for them to do in any given day. It's not a full day's work.
Okay.
Are there any members of your staff that are doing essentially no work?
I could adjust staffing to do that.
No, we're trying to get away from that.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to go the opposite.
Yeah,
We're trying to-
we're trying to.
Trying to
put as
avoid
many people to work,
layoffs
right.
by getting these people back to work, whether it's, how much.
And they're trying to minimize the admin leave with the pay and determine how to do that.
Yeah.
But we were trying to discuss where it might be happening, how it's impacting you. With the continuity of operations, typically you're saying, okay, we've identified three core services we have to provide during this situation. So then that means you've scaled back the other work of some individuals. And that's usually what happens in a continuity of operations in this type of situation. But I think a lot of our offices are trying to keep everything going to 100% and provide all essential services. It just looks a little different right now.
I'm still in favor of trying to get those 200 employees back to work.
Okay. And I thought Grace today told me they're sending the departments a report of who admin leave? Is that
Yeah,
what
how
Grace
much
had
admin
indicated?
leave
Has
has
been
been
used?
used. So what I passed out, what Sylvia did, this is just a quick snapshot of, in the first column where it says total employer costs. This is for, since we started observing this with the crisis, pay period 7, pay period 8. Total employer costs, that was out the door, employer costs for those two payrolls. The total COVID costs associated with those payrolls, and then the percentage of COVID to total payroll. And then in the second grouping, COVID admin, that's specifically COVID admin time that was coded. And then the percentage of the total payroll, and then non-admin. So say somebody's doing COVID overtime. That would be in that second bucket. So this is how we're tracking it right
Okay.
now, just to give you an idea of what the numbers are. And then I tossed in what our department costs are that we've been putting in those special accounts in Fund 11. As of today, the departments have spent $11,603 on COVID supplies, and we'll be asking for reimbursement from the state for that.
Okay.
And then the FEMA direct costs to the EOC, today we're at approximately $15,000 total. So if there's a big spike when things wind down and it goes back up again, we could see those costs go back up, but they're not thinking that it is. They're already kind of winding down the EOC at this point. So right now, total costs associated with COVID in the system, $236,399. Just so you kind of know where we're at. And also, payroll did mention to me and wanted to communicate to you that once we spin back up again, there's going to probably be a huge influx of demand for services because we've been shut down for so long. So we're probably going to see
key.
a lot of overtime that's not budgeted for.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Dena. Okay, a couple questions. So the 236,399, for the benefit of everyone listening in, is reimbursable? Is that a fair statement?
15,000 we know is reimbursable.
Oh,
11,000 probably through the state. The personnel part,
Probably not at all.
we don't know.
26K then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, 26 out of 236.
out of 236, okay, so a little over 10%.
But a lot of this COVID admin leave, if we're paying people like they were normally working, it is in the budget.
Right.
So that
Yeah,
we're not-
precisely.
We're not going over
We're
the
not,
budget.
yeah, right.
But those non-admin COVID costs, that's overtime. That's extra time that's not budgeted. And then any post-COVID costs that we have in overtime, those costs won't be budgeted.
Right. You brought up an interesting point, because as the economy comes back or these orders get lifted, and then we get a surge of demand, if the people are not available to handle that demand, and I'm talking about current employees, trained, they know their work, whatever their current disposition is, we have got a problem. Because we're going to be into a ramp-up mode, and if we have laid these people off, yes, you can bring them back, but administratively, we might have a nightmare on our hands. I don't know. But that's the one thing that makes me skittish about even taking up the issue of layoff. But to Leslie's point, how do we get as many of these people back to work as soon as we can? And that gets tricky, because let's say we have a situation where we tell people ahead of May 1st, you know, we'd really like you to come to work, and that individual is feeling insecure about it because of the potential spread, whatever. How do we deal with it? Are we gonna fire them?
Hey, if they cannot bring in a doctor's note, then they're going to have to make a decision.
Okay.
So I don't think that that's going to be
I don't think
very,
so either.
you know,
Well, it's only 2 more weeks.
It's only 2 more weeks.
After May 1st, we can reassess all this.
We can reassess, that's correct.
And then what I would like from the elected officials and department heads coming up is saying, what is their their ramp up going to look like? I mean, are you looking at going back to just taking appointments only for the month of May or for the first 2 weeks of May? You know, what in your mind, Joe, do you see you starting back up? Because just because governor comes out and says, okay, everybody goes back to work just the way you were in February, doesn't mean that your department needs to do that. Your department can say, look, what we did was we took appointments, that worked great, that will alleviate some of the pressure. We won't have to do overtime if we just take appointments for these 2 weeks or whatever and do that. I mean, that's kind of what I want to hear from people is how are they going to handle this potential influx and how are they going to manage their employees to do that, so.
We've been doing everything we can in the assessor's office to alleviate the wave of service that's going to be demanded when we reopen by proactively calling property owners, benefit applicants, that type of thing.
DMV?
DMV, as much mail, as much internet service as possible. We have a little bit of a blip on the screen there because we are in warm weather and people are wanting to register their recreational vehicles through parks and recreation, parks and recreation. Their system is down for 2 week period.
Oh, no.
Anything we can work around. It's just
Right.
down. So we expect to have that on top of our reopen, the demand for that. And it's the season.
Right.
So it's the season to play, so as far as the warm weather. But we're addressing it as much as we can now proactively in the ways that we can. Appraisal processes are staying online as we would normally expect them to, and our customer service admin, we are just simply going to do as much as we can by appointment. Motor vehicles initially would be by appointment, probably through mid-May, through May. Then once those assessment notices go out,
That's
you
it.
know, we'd rather not be in an appointment mode.
Right,
We'll see what happens. That's 6 weeks out.
right, right. So I really appreciate your thinking ahead, Joe, and my guess is that probably all of our elected officials have already thought that far ahead. And so that's just kind of what I would like a little bit of feedback, saying, yep, got a plan. Got a plan.
You know, again, even on a national level, even the president, as anxious as he is to get everything reopened, is really talking about a 3-phase process that begins May 1st and extends at least into June anyway. So that's, I suspect what we're looking at least in some departments. The smaller departments may be able to ramp up almost immediately. Anything else? Darrin, did you want to jump in here?
No, I don't have anything on the legal end to add.
Bill?
Well, I agree with what's been said. I think it's a mistake to see, I think it is, they're looking at a 3-phase type of a back to work, but to think that that's going to be 3 distinct phases, I think is unrealistic. Once you start, it's going to have a life of its own, and we need to be prepared for that.
Okay, so what are we concluding here? Try to get as many people back as possible, but continue to pay?
Yes, so we'll leave that, I guess, formalized. Does legal want that formalized?
Probably.
Yeah. Darrin, I guess we're going to do a motion?
Yeah, you'll need to do a motion. It's similar to the one you did earlier, Leslie.
Okay. I move that we request department heads and EOs get back, provide work for as many employees as possible to get them off administrative leave, however, allowing for those circumstances to be addressed one by one for those who cannot return to work, and then we can make a determination for admin leave.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
Aye.
Chairman Sylvia?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3, continuity of operations, next steps. I think we're kind of easing into that. Sylvia, go right ahead, please.
And I put this item on the agenda because we need to start looking at what that's gonna be looking like. And I really don't see, we're just gonna go and turn on the switch come May 1 and it's business as usual. It'll be phased in approach. Really just how will we all look at getting back to normal operations over time and doing a phased reopening strategy, continue telework, start in, maybe it's right now, like, I'll just use HR as an example. One of us comes in one day a week, does some basic things that we need to do, but the majority of the time we're teleworking. Maybe that's gonna look like 1 or 2 people in the office, and then as we see the COVID curve decrease, you know, we want it to peak, but we really want it to decrease, then you add more staffing as you go along. And really just looking at potential overtime issues that may come up for some departments and just being aware of that. And we need to include the safety and health of our staff in these plans, specifically
Absolutely.
the social distancing, the sanitation, what barriers have we put in or do we need to put in to keep our customers safe and us safe, just like grocery stores are
Right.
starting to put up those plexiglass barriers, and I think
Understands that.
wonderful. So do other departments need to do it? If it can't be plexiglass, is it some form of a plastic that can go up? But really, all of us starting to think what that might look like for all of our areas. And in some situations, are masks gonna be needed?
Right.
For those areas, and, you know, either bring your own or we supply them if we can even get a hold of anything. And continue the communication and messaging, because that has been great, knowing where things stand with the cases and what the EOCC has for us. That has been tremendous, and I've heard a lot of good feedback there. But I think each department and elected office needs to look at it. We will have issues of those individuals that are high risk. How are we gonna deal with them? And we're gonna have to do that on an individual basis.
Absolutely.
In a prioritized way, can we get back as many as feasible back to work? And then that last phase is bringing back our at-risk or whatever, and then eventually if they still can't come to work, ensuring that they have FMLA available to them or what's available.
Right. Well, and I know of one instance who this person can just remain teleworking. They can choose when they want to come back, but otherwise their job has been, you know, flawless. I mean, just, they've been able to do everything they need to do.
From home.
From home.
We're also a border state.
Yeah.
So just because Idaho opens back up, Washington may not, and we do have quite a few employees that live in Washington, so we may have to flex with.
Yeah, and Governor Inslee's order is good till May 4th.
Yeah, but I think both the orders, Idaho and Washington's, indicates that if you need to cross the
Yeah.
border for work, you can.
Yeah, so I don't know that we have a lot of Washington residents who aren't coming to work.
We have one, and she has a kid at home, so
Okay.
she has to work from home, but she works from home, so.
Sure.
But there could be other situations where.
Right, and I'm fine with, I mean, to me, this was a great chance to see who can work from home. And I asked people in the beginning, please develop some metrics. So when this is over, we can say, it worked for this group of employees, or it didn't work for this group. And maybe that's something that Kootenai County now does, is we have a certain percentage who share desk or work from home or that kind of thing. So I want to hear all those. I'm excited for that because it's worked really well in our department.
And we may want to still continue some of it to some
Yeah.
level, because then we're not in this rush of IT trying to get us all ramped up.
Right.
We do it on a regular basis as part of a schedule that we are working from home for those positions that really can.
Right, and then as far as the masks go, people just have to email EOCLOG, so the EOC logistics, @gmail.com. And they can get, they have cloth masks and surgical masks for those who may need that extra protection. But what I kind of saw was, we didn't wake up one day and said, we had our first COVID case and we shut our doors. We had that process where we started paring down. I'd like to reverse that process. Okay, so now we've got, like our room is set up again. So now we can have meetings with 25 or less and kind of stair step it back up that way. So kind of how we came into the funnel and go back out that way. That's kind of how I envisioned we getting back to work. So we had some people leave right away with, the high-risk people and say, okay, I'm working from home. So let's let those people continue to work from home until they're ready to come back, as long as the metrics are there and the supervisors, the EOs are in agreements with that. So that's kind of how I kind of saw some things ramping back up for us. So not like, come May 4th, we open the doors at 8 a.m. and we have 840 people.
Yeah. That would be unworkable, yeah. And again, this is what they're envisioning on a national scale, a phased ramp up, yeah.
And just like building and grounds, they were sanitizing all of the mutual areas. And so I imagine that will start back up again once our doors are unlocked. So, yeah, so I just like some feedback from our directors and elected officials to kind of say, hey, this is what we have in mind, and, how can the board support them getting back, I don't know if we can ever be normal again, but.
The other thing that's interesting is when you look at some of these preventive measures, and specifically UV lighting. I just happened to hear of an interview with, it was just a couple of minutes on Saturday Morning Business Review, and it was a former NASA engineer. And he basically displayed several different products that are commercially available. For UV, one of them you can mount in the car. If you want to go on a bigger scale, you can mount them in the ceiling. And basically, they have been known to destroy the virus. And so that's something to consider. I don't know what they cost. If you get into the bigger units, it might be rather expensive, but they're still measures that we can, even on an individual basis, do. And the UV is actually very effective. So, but we might be able to look at it at a county level too, because there's no way of knowing that this isn't going to mutate and resurge, which they've been known to do.
And it isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's going to vary by
No.
departments and offices, for sure.
And even region.
Absolutely.
Are we all set? Anything else?
I think that's it. So we'll get with Nancy and reiterate some of the stuff we talked about today, so we can send
Publish
that
it.
to countywide management team.
Yep.
Asking for some feedback. And Joe, we got your feedback, so if you don't want to respond, that's good. I mean, that's fine with us. But, Treasurer, Coroner, anything to add?
Anything?
Pretty much has been running up and teleworking and those kind of things, and we're keeping up with everything. We have a little staff every now and then in the mail, but that's not a problem. We rotate people to the office and handle all the calls and whatnot.
Thank you.
Steve?
We're in good shape.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? Hearing none. 1:46. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.